Good morning, all. This is the Kubernetes community meetup for Thursday, May 12th. As I say every time, this will be recorded and posted on YouTube, so don't say anything you wouldn't want your mother to know you're saying. Today on our agenda, the first thing up is a demo from the team at Unova. So Rob, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you're going to demo and introduce your partner in crime?
Sure. Hi, it's Rob Lalonde. I'm here with Cameron. I'll just quickly flip on video so you know we're real. Yeah, we're going to demonstrate our Navops launch product to show you how we build clusters either on-premise or in the cloud. And I'm going to show you a quick hybrid demo. Audio craziness there. So do you want me to just share my screen, Sarah?
Yes, that would be great if you can share it.
Okay, just a couple of quick slides before we actually.
Yeah. We're gonna have some cold donuts. You know it.
Okay. I muted Rick and that stopped our echo. I unmuted you, Robert.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So just quickly, I won't go into a full-on advertisement, but just so you know who we are, we've been around for many years in kind of a different space, the HPC space. So Unova has been building super large clusters for real big oil companies, life sciences organizations for many years. We've been orchestrating workloads on that. We brought our technology over to the kind of Kubernetes container space over the last year, and we've been sort of rebranding and repackaging these solutions for containers. So what we wanted to talk about, and I won't get into the customers too much here, I want to talk about the Navops launch product. We came up with it last fall, and it's a very easy way to build a cluster. It's a UI-based solution. It gives you a full Atomic, Kubernetes, Flannel, etcd, Docker cluster, all prepackaged. You can build on-premise using bare metal, or you can build in the cloud. Google Cloud and Amazon for that, or you can even build a hybrid cloud, and we're going to show you how we can do that and kind of auto scale that as well. People at Samsung did some testing on our product a little while back, and they saw that some of the benefits. And it really comes down to a command line approach where you have kind of 200 steps to install a whole cluster versus a simple UI. And I'll just jump down and show you that really quickly. I'm not going to take a lot of time, and Sarah gave us a 10-minute limit, and I believe we can achieve that. So here you can see Google Cloud running. We've got no VM instances. We'll go over the Navops launch screen. This is the simple UI for Navops launch. To install a master node, that's all you do.
Is anyone else seeing the wrong screen? Or
I think we are seeing the wrong screen from you. All we're seeing is
slide overview.
Sorry, I know what I did wrong. I got all excited and I jumped to, there we go.
There we go.
That was my fault. Okay, let me start really quickly back at the beginning. So here's the Google Compute engine, and you can see there's nothing running. I've just started up a master node, and I think you can all see that now. And if I go and refresh my screen on Google Compute, you'll see how easy it was to create a fully provisioned master node. And that little delay we had probably allowed me enough time to actually get it started up and running. There it is. And you can see the master node up and running. So a little easier than the 200 steps required. Add a worker node. And again, we'll go over to Compute Engine, and you'll see that spinning up. And Cameron, while that's happening, I'll just share my, whoops. I'll just share the slides again, and you can talk about the architecture. Yeah. You can see that.
Okay, so we kind of skipped over the actual installation of Navops launch, which is really just done from a script on the internet, which pulls down a set of containers, which a set of images, and then launches some containers that run on a Docker engine, typically in your local data center on your laptop. In Rob's case here, we pulled down several containers. The first one that you saw there was the web UI. We also have kind of a control container that holds the complete provisioning solution. This has a lot of existing technology that we had developed over the last several years for provisioning cluster resources both on bare metal, on local hypervisors or in various cloud providers. So we have that container. And then we also have a container that hosts an operating system repository for actually doing local bare metal installations. So in that case, it's really just since we're using Fedora Core Atomic, it's hosting it's an HTTP server hosting an OS tree repository that is then served up through Pixie kickstarts. That's the bare metal general architecture. When running in what Rob's showing here, it's all in the cloud. So you only need two local containers, the UI and the kind of orchestration solution or the provisioning solution. And it goes and it talks directly to GCP and creates the resources, sets them up in the cloud and the Kubernetes installation and uses the Kubernetes bits that are provided as part of Fedora Core.
Cool. I'm just going to quickly share now this video. And this is the demo we showed at Google Cloud Next. So we're going to just off camera just walk through how this works. Because what we've done is we've provisioned a local cluster there. It was running on a trade booth, and we were spinning up essentially instances in the cloud as the workload went up. And all that.
Yeah. So what's going on right here before we get started? We have the four windows. So what has happened here is we've actually set up a Navops launch installation with a single master, a single worker on a local Kubernetes cluster. And we've launched several pods on top of that local infrastructure. You can see our little test application in the upper left, which is has some demo clients that's generating some load against our demo server. We have in the right the kube dash showing kind of the status of the replication controllers and pods in the system. Down in the lower left, we have the Grafana from the kube reporting system showing up from Keepster, showing the current load in the cluster. And then on the right, we have the kind of current state of the GCP project that we're going to be bursting into as the load increases against our application. The one instance that's running there is our VPN, which is actually bridging our local network from our local network.
Anyone who is not talking, can you guys mute? Because we're getting a lot of feedback.
Yeah, so it's bridging our local flannel network to the GCP cluster network. So with that, we'll get started here. So the first thing that I'm going to do is scale up in this movie. I'm scaling up the number of demo clients, which this is going to increase the load, and we're going to have to scale up in Kubernetes the amount of replication controller or pod instances to handle this. So this is automatically detected by our through our rule engine. We could also use the horizontal pod autoscaler in this case as well. So you can see right there, we want to have 8, and there are 6 pending because we don't have enough resources. And you can see that there with the red message. There isn't enough CPU on our single worker to be able to handle all of the replicas. So let's move your mouse. So now you can see our policy engine automatically launched 2 extra nodes there in GCP, worker 1 and worker 2, to handle the additional load required to meet the 8 pending demo, or the 8 actual demo application pods. So after a little bit of time there, those start up and those are running. And they'll immediately join our cluster, and we'll see that over there in Grafana in just a second, that the available capacity has increased. We can see that now we're handling more requests per second. In this demo, the first instance got available a little bit faster. So we'll see another stair step here in a second where when the second GCP instance becomes available. So there you go. The second one started up. And now you can see all 8 of our pods are up and running and handling our increased load of our web application. This is all possible, because we support all these multiple provisioning technologies inside of our Navops product. So scaling it back down, we'll reduce the load. Our policy engine will detect all of this, and we'll actually start scaling down the cluster, since we don't need all of these extra replication controller pods, or these extra pods running to handle our increased load. So there we go. Those have been scaled down, and I roll this down. You'll see we're shutting down those instances, and they'll be down and completed here in just a second. So I think, Rob, this is all we.
Yeah,
really
that's all
to
we
show.
wanted to show. We just wanted to show people how we can do hybrid cloud bursting and provisioning of clusters, and we appreciate you taking the time. If there's any questions, we can field them now.
Yeah, we've got time for 1 or 2 questions if anybody has any. All right.
Good enough.
We can always follow up in, I presume, email or on Slack with you guys.
Of course, and we'll be at OSCON, so we hope to see some of you there.
Fantastic.
Thanks for taking the time to let us show our stuff.
Yeah, happy to. All right, so next up on the list is a little update on the community repo and the wiki move. I don't know if either Aaron or Matt are on the line, but I am happy to give a little update if either of them is not on the line. Aaron or Matt? No? Okay. So we have been working to set up a new way to handle the Kubernetes wiki in order to make it easier to update. You wouldn't need actual commit and merge privileges on the Kubernetes main repository in order to make updates. So we have started moving the content out to a new community repo under the Kubernetes organization. So I put in a couple of links in this agenda item. Matt Farina has made the first pull request against it and gotten us sort of stubbed out. We want to set up a directory for every special interest group so that you can have your own space to share content, write up any information, share notes, and we can start moving away from what makes for a less than transparent starting point for new users coming into the community. So right now there's a lot of Google Doc shenanigans in order to get somebody to see what the agendas look like or what might be being discussed in a particular special interest group. So as we start bringing in new special interest groups and as we have time, I want to start migrating more of the content around our different meetings and special interest groups, including this one, into the community repo. So we will start putting agenda notes up into the community repo there, as well as sending them out to the mailing list, but no longer posting them on the blog for Kubernetes. So that work is continuing forward. Aaron was very patient in waiting for, he was the one that created the first the first issue about fixing it so you didn't have to have merge permissions in order to make updates to the wiki. This way we can hopefully get more people engaged with and working on content out on the web. All right, next up on the agenda.
Ask a question?
Oh, please.
Does that mean moving the content out of the GitHub site and into the wiki?
So not documentation, so there is, if you go to github.com Kubernetes wiki, there is content there that is really hard to update. Anything that is in github.com kubernetes.github.io stays where it is. So that's the documentation site. So we're not looking to move that around. This is just the ad hoc cross-communication stuff that has been happening in github.com Kubernetes wiki. Does that answer the question?
Yep, thanks.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, so let's move on to SIG reporting. So Bob, I believe you were going to tell us what is going on with SIG Scale.
I would be happy to do so. Give me a moment here while I share my screen.
And while you're sharing your screen, I'm going to pitch again that I could use some note-taking help because I manage a couple of other things on the backside trying to make sure this all goes smoothly, and so my notes are erratic at best.
Great. Can you guys see this now?
We can.
Great. Okay, so we actually spent our meeting this morning going through some of these slides as a group just to make sure that we were all kind of on the same page. Let me just jump ahead here. And Sarah, I sent the link to you as well. So if you want to post it somewhere, you can do that. But the link to this presentation is also in the SIG Scale meeting notes doc. It always seems like a good idea to repeat some of these things just when we meet. 9 a.m. on Thursdays. Here's the link, so you can follow your nose through the normal path, starting with a Google search, even if you want to.
And this is a perfect example of the github.com Kubernetes wiki links.
Okay, great. So, okay, yeah. So anyway, it feels like good to do that. All right. So, of course, as you might expect, there's been a lot of discussion around 1.3, but there's also been we've been having a fair bit of discussion about kind of the future beyond that. Really, the community discussion has been kind of along 3 tracks, which is some performance goals, both 1.3 and somewhat beyond, a set of, I'll say, obvious and interesting improvements that the community's gotten pretty enthusiastic about getting done here, and then the general topic of data sharing. Okay, so discussion on performance goals. So this has actually probably taken the most, has gotten the most energy for a number of reasons. One is that I think everyone's keen to avoid, I'll call them marketing mistakes, confusing kind of short-term testing efforts with the overall project goals. So what we refer to as the 100-node meme. So we're trying to be very careful about how we talk about these things. And I think there's been a pretty healthy discussion around the need to support different goals and deployment patterns. I think the specific one has been, the one that I would really want everyone to keep in mind is that there are some different deployment patterns here. And I think certainly the Google team is very eloquent about explaining that smaller clusters arranged into availability zones is a great way to make sure you can run lots of cores with high availability. But I think there are also some other use cases where larger single clusters, which perhaps may have different availability requirements, are still a requirement. So one of the really great discussions we've been having is about making sure we can get the kind of community goals arranged to support both of these. And there's been a pretty good discussion around, is there some natural size limit where it's just kind of not really that useful to go beyond. I mean, you start looking at some of the stats around the largest clusters in the world. That's probably, that may not be effort worth spending, millions of cores kinds of setups. So that's there's an ongoing healthy debate about that, and just thought I would mention that we have had a fair bit of discussion around wide variation in node sizes, how some companies, some efforts are oriented towards really large nodes, and that's great. There's been work going on around this in the node group. And then, so shout out to the node SIG, and then also federated testing continues to be a hot topic in SIG testing, and overall, the importance around being able to characterize performance on a bunch of different environments continues to be important. And I have one other comment on that a little bit later here. I'd say we have a very interactive group. I'm kind of walking through this a little bit fast, but there are an awful lot of people here who are part of the SIG performance group, SIG scaling group, that I welcome you to jump in and make a comment as I go here. Joe, are you on? Did you want to make a comment here?
I am on. I think you're handling it great. I mean, no comments here. I think it's just it's not quite as linear as I think we originally expected in terms of putting these goals together. A lot of ins and outs. So I think the slide captures that.
Great. So I guess I think one of our goals for the presentation today was to make sure that there was some context around this discussion. So as a follow-up, I'm sure some of you will want to go and look at some other docs and dig into some of the numbers, but this is some of the context around how those numbers are being discussed. Okay, so kind of two tracks here. One is two tracks within the track. So in terms of just discussion of performance goals, one thing I think everyone should be aware is that there's a bit of a shift in terms of how we talk about, how we characterize cluster performance mid-stride. So Quentin has been kind of leading the charge on this. Quentin and Wojtek and some of the other Google folks. And I think there's some stuff that they're not quite ready to publish here, but this is kind of like the snapshot here, which is to move to a cores per cluster, pods per core, and then pods per second as kind of one of the ways to look at it. But this is work that's been going on kind of in the course of the 1.3 work. So for 1.3, the sort of previous gen way of looking at cluster performance is still the way things are going to get talked about, which is nodes, pods per nodes, maximum number of pods, and still all in the context of the current latencies. So I will pause here and see if any one of the other folks wants to make a comment about 1.3. And if not, I will move on.
Hey, Bob, a quick question. This is probably obvious, but I've just missed it. But just in terms of how many containers per pod are we, or what types of containers are going in those pods?
Well, again, I'll leave this open for other comments. But in terms of working on control, this is really largely around control plane kinds of work. So we've been using, for example, the pause containers and the scratch containers. So the goal here has really been, the discussion here is really about control plane performance, not about total cluster throughput. And of course, you quickly get into the specifics of, well, what exactly are your nodes to be able to talk about that. And I think I've covered this in previous meetings, but there's a node emulator that gets used for a lot of this work.
Right. Yeah, honestly, in terms of containers per pod, I don't think that those are numbers that people have been looking at. From the control plane, I'm not sure it makes that big a difference. I mean, if you had 100 containers per pod, it would probably start, changing things because the control plane would have to track more data. But my assumption here is that we're talking, like 2, 3, for the most containers per pod.
Again, I think a lot of this work has really been going on in the node SIG, and there are certainly issues that I'm not probably the most qualified to talk about in terms of kind of maximum numbers of containers per node, and this is around Docker daemon performance or other things. So, all right, shall I move on?
Please.
All right. Okay, so just thought I would throw up here. So this is this is on the track of interesting work that's being done to actually move the performance ball ahead in the 1.3. So the 1.6 work actually got done pretty early. There's been a bunch of work around control plane optimization and network overhead. I put some PR notes here, put some names up here. You of course tend to see the same names over and over again. HTTP2, protobuf support. Wojtek's done a ton of work on the scheduler infrastructure. I think the Red Hat folks as well have worked a lot on the relist and resync optimizations. It is, and I have another comment on this in a minute, some of these things, there's kind of a natural point to go to a single PR where you can kind of follow your nose from there. Some of these are pretty large sets of PRs, and I guess if you're specifically interested, a couple of the names here would be the folks to go poke at in Slack to ask some questions. Certainly worth mentioning, etcd 3.0 has been a pretty big effort. CoreOS guys were telling us in the meeting this morning that E2E is like this part of the project is going really well. ET is passing. They're working on some upgraded testing tools, but it sounded like they were feeling pretty positive about how this was going. And again, I'll pause if someone wants to jump in with a comment.
I'll ask if this has actually gotten into the tracking documents, just as an aside. And it doesn't have to be answered. It just, we should make sure that this information is tracked with what Mike is working on in parallel.
It's mostly there. I think that the issues around kind of pulling together a pretty disparate set of PRs that all kind of encapsulate the work is
hard.
Makes it hard. And I'm going to make another, lobbying plea for trying to be a little bit more organized about that in the future. So
we are continuing to try to work to find a good way.
Yeah, I know. I think everyone kind of knows this is the case, but it at least is a good point to show the impact of that. And then on the data sharing track, certainly, I mean, it's critical for us to be able to exchange in the community, exchange data about performance and about cluster configurations. And so there's still work to be done there. I think Merrick has been making some good progress on a performance monitoring dashboard. I think at the meeting this morning, he was, I don't know, feeling like it was maybe a little bit early perhaps to be showing this off, but I think it's great progress in this direction. So I was going to essentially insist that, hey, this is great to see this kind of progress. So Sarah, might be, I guess I would lobby for a quick demo at some future community meeting of the dashboard.
Yep,
Performance
we can do that.
I think that was about all I had here, just kind of wider community topics that come up a lot in the SIG. How and when do we release? Are we going to be in our LTS model? Just kind of understanding the future of release management will really help to organize the work, especially because some of these scalability-oriented topics are kind of long-running projects. It would really help us organize the work if we had some of that nailed down. And then just again, the topics around, it's kind of hard to follow some of these work efforts if you're not super deeply involved in them. And I think the kinds of things that have come up in discussion are around, being diligent about using the labels, having single PRs that kind of cover the epic or the effort or whatever. And release wranglers, maybe there's some ways to apply some new roles here. And I think that's really kind of some of the work that Mike's been doing with trying to collect all of the PRs into the spreadsheets from the SIGs kind of falls into this category. So it's great to see that going on. That's really all I had by way of an update.
Thanks, Bob. And I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you off and suggest,
all done. Thanks.
Suggest that people reach out to you or Joe if they have questions about SIG Scale, which also happens at 9 a.m. on Thursday Pacific time.
Yep, great, thank you.
Yeah, you're most welcome, and thank you for joining. We are going to need to go a little bit quicker through because we also have another last-minute add to the agenda. So I want to introduce Michelle Nourali, who is leading up an effort to start a SIG that is focused on user experience and the application developer. So Michelle, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Maybe 2 to 5 minutes. Hopefully we won't go into a long discussion, or we'll spin that out if we need to.
Sure, yeah. So my name's Michelle. I'm on the Helm team at Deus, and I also want to introduce Matt Farina. He's on the Advanced Technology Group at HP, and we just want to introduce a new SIG, or a possible new SIG called SIG Apps. Rather, it's more of a transformation of SIG Config. So some of us who have been following SIG Config and SIG Big Data got together recently to talk about some concerns we had. So on the SIG Config side, it seemed like there was a broad range of topics that were being discussed, and perhaps the name didn't match the scope of the SIG. There was a lot of overlap also between topics discussed in that SIG and other SIGs, and the community meeting and participation was dwindling as well. And on the SIG Big Data side, they were looking also to perhaps transform into a more general SIG for running applications. So basically, long story short, there were about 5 or 6 of us on this call, and what we realized was that what we all really actually were interested in doing was creating a SIG where we could focus on running applications in Kubernetes and how to make that a fantastic experience, especially from the application developer and DevOps perspective. So there's a lot of attention currently on focus on building, scaling, and operating Kubernetes, and that's awesome. But we also wanted a place where we could focus on how users define, manage, and run applications in Kubernetes. especially for people who are just getting started. So we're thinking about creating this app, this SIG called SIG Apps. We're probably going to do weekly meetings Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. The first one will be this Wednesday, and we're going to have someone from OpenShift named Prashant do a demo on PetSet. So I hope you join, and Matt and I are available for any questions or concerns or any ideas about interesting topics. Matt, do you have anything to add?
I don't. I think you did a wonderful job.
Awesome. And Michelle was hedging about we're moving this forward. We think we are going to go ahead and move this forward. I think she's been waiting for me to answer yes and get her a bunch of specific logistical things. But that will all happen in time for a Wednesday meeting, as she suggested, and we can go ahead and announce that on Kubernetes Dev when that happens. As well as, I'm going to pitch here, the new Kubernetes-users mailing list, which those of you who are developing and who are interested in how users are using Kubernetes, that we would love to get people seeded into there so that we, as people who have experience with Kubernetes, can answer questions when we send users to this mailing list. It's no fun to send a user to a mailing list and then say, oh yeah, but there's nobody here that can answer your questions. So we need to get that seeded with people that are interested in and able to answer questions about how Kubernetes works already. But I love the user focus. I think this is super awesome, and it is that time in our evolution. So also on this list for the SIG update was SIG cluster ops. It looks like there's a remote architecture, or sorry, not a remote, a reference architecture conversation happening today at 1 p.m. Rob, did you have anything more than just that announcement?
No, I'd like to encourage people to come.
Well, yes.
Obviously, but no, we've been doing demos for a while, and we're going to get back to some work today.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for sharing the timing on that. So I did say that we had a new agenda item that was pressing and urgent, and so I will add Eric Paris, or let him take the stage here to talk about the merge queue.
Yeah. So I guess I want to not name names, but call a lot of people out and discuss what we think we can do to make things better. The merge queue over the last couple of days has been lucky to merge 10 real PRs. There's currently 54 real PRs in the queue. I consider it a real PR if it needs E2E tests. So at the rate things are going, if you created a new PR today, it wouldn't get merged for about a week, which seems pretty unacceptable. What I've noticed in the last 2 days is an extremely large number of Google employees who are adding priority labels to their PRs for whatever reason to jump in front of the queue. And this doesn't seem manageable when we have so many people backed up that arbitrary features kind of are leaping to the front. I know that we have these 1.3 release features as well, but I'm not sure what the best way to attack this. In case people wonder, the queue could run at about 50 PRs a day if it went full speed for 24 hours. Maybe it's a little lower right now. Seems some tests are taking longer, maybe 44 PRs a day. So if we had no Flakes, the queue would be able to run and drain by end of day tomorrow. I'd like to start a discussion on how to make this better. My gamification thought is that you're only allowed to up a priority from P3 to P2 if you fix a flake. And if you fix a second flake, you can go from P2 to P1. And if you fix a third flake, you can go to P0. That way you're incentivized, if you want your PR to go first, to make the system work better for everybody else. I'd like to have this discussion off list, but everybody should start thinking about, A, stop arbitrarily labeling your features so they get in front of everybody else's features, and B, how do we make this better for everybody? And I'll shut up and let other people discuss, and I know we don't have a lot of time to discuss.
We have a little bit, and this is a really important thing. But including, I'm seeing little golf claps in the chat. So I think figuring a way to make this work. I love your gamification idea. I don't know how we can enforce that. Maybe we certainly can suggest this as or suggest this and engage and encourage this as a community. I don't know, perhaps there is someone, maybe a build cop of the day or some of the other team that can jump in and suggest if this is possible, if we can enforce it, or if there's an easy way that we can make this better as a community experience.
If there's general agreement, I regularly get queried by people at Red Hat. For anybody who doesn't know, that's where I am, about what the priority is in the queue and why things have leapt to the top. So I would have no problem if the community likes the idea of putting your issue, fixed flake such and such, upping priority. I would have no problem looking for things with priority that didn't have that and yelling at people, at least for the next couple weeks while we're crunching towards 1.3. I don't know if this has to be a enforced thing. We might all be able to just kind of create pressure on ourselves to follow the system.
Quick question. Do you have any recommendation on when it would be okay to up the priority? I think like there's
anything that fixes a bug should jump in my mind.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. I want to add to that, Eric. Like, I think if it fixes a flake that's frequently encountered, then that should be like a P0, P1. But if it's like there's a ton of us working on features that we're trying to get into Cube 1.3. And so I don't think any new feature should necessarily immediately get bumped higher than the normal P3 priority, because it's really annoying to everybody else. But the only thing I see right now that's worth moving up higher is things that fix a broken test infrastructure, or things that fix like a P0 flake or a P1 flake.
Yeah, I definitely buy that. What about things that touch a lot of code and the developer keeps getting hit in rebase hell? Like, is that just...
So like a number of us get hit in rebase hell, and I think there are some I know scheduled job went in recently, and I can get that would be difficult. So like if your PR like grows beyond like a certain size, maybe I could reason on that, but I haven't seen that as the metric that people are using lately to change priority.
I kind of like my gamification solution to that problem, because if you're in rebase hell, you might want to spend some of your time fixing a flake, in which case you would move up the queue and help you get out of your rebase cycle. So it's kind of a self-interest, help everybody idea.
Yeah, Joe also has a comment. He's been very graciously raising his hand, although I can't see everybody's video, so that won't be effective as a queuing mechanism.
I think, having a default priority for any work that people want to do, I think there's also room for another priority above that for P0, P1 work that actually has gone through, essentially, as we start to develop the more formal process of getting stuff into a release, where you actually have a wide agreement, where that stuff is sort of on the track, and the community has sort of put effort as a whole into that thing. Getting that thing in there at a higher priority, I think, makes sense then also, beyond sort of ad hoc work that isn't necessarily pinned to a release. But I would totally agree, like fixing the flakes and letting the queue flow freely is definitely the highest priority.
You end up getting like SIGs competing with each other, right? So like if the node SIG sees something that's a high priority get in, then you're going to end up competing with like, I don't know, pick another SIG, the API machinery SIG, and everybody's going to say that their stuff is P0, P1. So then priority ends up meaning nothing.
Well, no, what I would say is that this is stuff that cuts across the project that is actually, part of the release planning cycle, where essentially it's being tracked on a spreadsheet. There's a document and an owner to actually back that thing up, right? So in terms of release priorities, this has already been sort of longitudinally identified as being critical to the release, versus something that's just opportunistic. I was hoping to sort of sneak this in, type of thing.
But I think the key point is cleaning up the submit queue and the flakes so that we don't have to have these trade-offs. And that's one of the reasons I like Eric's idea of incenting people in order to fix flakes and push PRs through. And I know that we still get into the more work to get to the more work, and suddenly we're yak shaving, but it is a reasonable approach to this.
Yeah, I know there are some people in chat talking about the overall health. It is, I guess, like our worst current test has about an 80% success rate, which if our overall queue had an 80% success rate, that would be wonderful.
Right.
But the only thing that over the last, this is I think day and a half, so I'm not sure how long this has been up. Oh no, 2 days, that has worked is go build. That is the only thing that hasn't flaked in 2 days. So there's lots of them in there. It compiles, ship it. Yeah, well. So even though it might seem like that one flake doesn't matter, it blocks everything for an hour, and a whole lot of those different one things blocking for an hour mean we're making no progress.
Right. And this is a line of single points of failure in some cases, or a set of single points of failure. I say let's see if we can encourage better behavior and certainly work on flakes. Is it possible for the broader community who is doing feature work at this point to actually meaningfully contribute against flakes, and seeing how this is happening? We had a lot of discussion about this a couple of months ago, and Google were trying to make it more transparent and easy for people to help on that. And I'm certain that we can be helpful in helping people learn how to do this better. But we need to make sure that we push this forward.
One thing that's not obvious to me is how you can tell which flake is the worst flake.
There's actually a little bit of work going on. One of the test engineers at Google is looking at highlighting flake of the day. Basically, what was the most single flaky test in the last 24 hours? In hopes that if we can fix that one for 2 weeks running, it helps in a large way. He did some basic analysis of looking back a few weeks, what caused the most problem, and it did turn out to be just a few things causing lots of problems, at least for this one period he looked at. So hopefully we'll get something like that soon, and that can help direct our efforts to the most high value places.
Okay, certainly a thing that we will continue to have to pay attention to and fix and make better. And thank you, Eric, for bringing it up and pushing everyone toward better behavior on this. I will keep a line item to talk about this again next week, but I'm sure we can do this also offline on mailing list and in Slack.
Probably. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, happy to. All right, we have about 15 minutes left to go through the 1.3 feature update, which, to be fair, I don't know that we need to spend 15 minutes on it. We just want to make sure that we are touching on the key features, and I want to follow up also with Mike and the work that he started last week. For those of you who weren't here during the Asia-friendly time-zoned meeting last week, Mike is looking for more help from the SIG leads in order to get sort of a dashboardy overview. So we'll get there after going through a couple of the quickly through a couple of the features that had been listed as P0. So TJ, do you want to go up first, and then Mike, we can follow up and take a look at your document again?
Sure.
That works for me. Yeah, so I'll start off. I actually I've been giving updates on sort of these P0 blocker 1.3 issues, features we've talked about. And I'd been gathering notes and reading them and having the note taker write them in the thing. So I figured I'd just paste them directly into the doc and save the note taker some time. So I am basically reading off the community meeting notes here. So for the four highest priority sort of issues that we're tracking, the sort of TLDR status is people are working hard. People are on track for feature complete, which is now 7 business days away. but they're tight on that more or less. So I guess business as expected, although we've done a better job of sort of scoping and moving resources around and asking for help early so that they're not going to blow past feature complete, which is great. So the first off is Kubernetes. Basically, designs are complete. The majority of code is under code review. And there are a handful of PRs remaining, including the end-to-end tests. But people from several different companies are contributing there to move that forward. And so that one is on track. PetSet, same story more or less, probably a little bit further along. This is the stateful application support feature. The last few PRs are in review. And once those get in, the end-to-end tests will shortly follow those. So hopefully we will get to writing the end-to-end tests late this week and next week. In terms of scaling, the 1.3 goals is a 2,000 node clusters working and passing the SLOs. You heard Bob just give a long overview about how scaling is going. And the gist of it is that 2,000 node clusters are working on KubeMark, which is sort of the node emulator that helps test the scheduler. And the density test is working. So on those 2,000 nodes, we're able to schedule 60,000 pods, actually with a lower latency than we were for even the 1,000 node clusters in 1.2. So the improvements that have happened have been material and look great. And the next step is to use real clusters, obviously, to validate those sort of emulated tests. And then the last item is about distributed testing. So this one is a little behind, perhaps. It's hard to hold this to the feature complete date in some sense, since it's a test dashboard and not actual code within Kubernetes. But the dashboard for aggregating all individual test results, including from outside companies other than Google, is in flight. And the estimate for that is 5/27, which is 2 weeks away. So hopefully we will have that out and working in about 2 weeks. And at that point, there'll be a much nicer view of seeing exactly which test is failing and looking over time and being able to sort by sort of most flaky and all of those things, as well as enabling other companies to upload their results and get those all under a single view.
Awesome, thank you. Mike, are you game to go quickly through the features that you had listed in here? I don't think we need to go through features regularly, but it is good, especially as we're coming up against the end of the 1.3.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the master kind of spreadsheet, which was shared with SIG leads, I would appreciate if TJ can go through it and quickly throughout. So I compiled it out of the list, out of the documents shared by different SIG groups in the beginning of 1.3. I think some of the items should be thrown out of there because they're tracked by Google internally. So if TJ can go through the list and throw them out, that would be helpful. General observation, so between CoreOS and Red Hat, the number of items which are P1s and are blocked on LGTM, even though implementation is already there. It seems like proposal was LGTM, and we go through the thrush cycle a little bit where somebody else asks for the comment and then they go back. Given that there are 7 business days remaining, it would be nice to unblock them. So if folks who are maintainers can concentrate on those the next day, would be great.
Can we collectively agree that the person that is identified as the owner, based on the list of different subcomponent owners, is the last person to say yes, and as they say yes, then we're good? Is that at this point, are we tight enough on the definition of owners and that list that we can do that at this point?
That would be great from our perspective.
I'm not hearing any no's or any concerns. Let me chase that as a to-do. And Joe actually also in the chat asked, why should Google not work?
That's up to TJ, basically, right? I'm kind of right. I know TJ tracks internally if he can merge the lists. I just don't have enough kind of visibility. So the list mostly reflects right now CoreOS and Red Hat and some other external contributions.
Yeah, I think it would be great if we could get a better view across the whole community, and that includes Google as just another member of the community.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I keep asking community SIG leads to review it and make it accurate. So my general observations are 28 items right now there with P1 or P2. And all of them are in progress, so waiting for final LGTM. So it's, I don't know, it's cutting pretty tight in my world. And then, yeah, so the doc has a quick update on the current status. So RocketNet is pretty close. If somebody can help with CAdvisor or at least accelerate LGTMs there, that would be helpful. We are basically refactoring CAdvisor to be somewhat less Docker specific. And then Kubernetes, we already covered, plus etcd3, we already covered in SIG Scale. And then the self-hosted kubelet is an example of when it has been LGTM'd and stuck again. Code is already from our side.
Awesome, thank you.
So once again, please, SIGleads, I sent the wrong link first time, but I sent the corrected one. Please review, help clean up the list. I think it will be in benefit for everyone.
I could not agree more, and thank you very much to you, Mike, having joined CoreOS, and to CoreOS for sharing your time with us in getting this sort of wrangled from an external perspective, external to Google perspective, but a broader community perspective.
My pleasure.
All right, we have 2 minutes for one more SIG update if Ihor is still on here, because he wanted to jump back and give us an update from the SIG OpenStack.
Yeah, I'm still here. So we have a brief, really great and important update from SIG OpenStack. We have released our first OpenStack provider for kube scripts. I will share the link in chat right now, and I will add it to the meeting agenda. So we have released the first set of scripts to deploy your Kubernetes cluster on OpenStack. It is based on heat and some SolStack stuff. So the only thing that you need to deploy your Kubernetes cluster on OpenStack is only OpenStack with heat and these kube scripts. So here we go.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ihor. That was even a super quick update. So fantastic.
Yeah. 2 minutes.
2 minutes. You did great. So I have one further notice, which is we will do an Asia-friendly timing again on June 2nd. So if you are working with people who live and exist in the Asian time zones, or if you're traveling to the Asian time zone, we'll test this again on June 2nd. But we had exactly one person in the Asia time zones on the last meeting. If we don't see a substantial uptick in that, then I think I'll double back in July and keep this at 10 a.m. until we see more requests for Asia friendly. If anyone who did present today wants to go take a peek and at the notes and add a little bit more, that would be super helpful. I'll send these out tomorrow. And then otherwise, we've got 2 minutes, 3 minutes if anyone wants to bring up any specific time zones.
I don't have a time zone issue.
I'm sorry. I'm reading chat as I'm talking, and that's never a good idea. If anyone has any specific topics.
I had a question about OSCON.
Oh, yes.
You said that you were going to have sort of an Ask the Experts. Is there a place to sign up for that? I wrangled 2 of my guys into...
Send me an email. That would be super helpful.
Simple enough.
So we are having a Google booth that is showing off all of the open source projects within Google Cloud, or that Google Cloud's contributing to, and Kubernetes is going to have a presence there doing open office hours. And then we also have a Kubernetes hackathon that is happening on Thursday at OSCON. It is actually the OSCON Contribute Hackathon, and one of the days is sponsored, one of the rooms, one of the days is sponsored by Kubernetes and the Cloud Native Compute Foundation. So if people are interested in helping on either of those, please send me an email or find me on Slack, or send me a carrier pigeon or something. All right.
I'm assuming you want a note by carrier pigeon, not just the pigeon.
Preferentially, yes. If the carrier pigeon actually needs, send me a carrier pigeon that contains some information. All right. Right, or a tweet.
I'm not going to go anywhere close to that. Thanks.
Yeah. Anyway, everybody have a great week, and I will see you from the hackathon or just before the hackathon next week at OSCON.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah. Have a great week.
Okay.